Christopher, be yourself. Because if you are, then you're not going to have to worry tomorrow about remembering who you pretended to be yesterday. So ladies and gentlemen, this is it. What you see is what you get.
Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Christie.
Good morning. It is great to be back at Garfield. I was here a number of times as a candidate for governor, and I'm anxious to get back here as governor to do a town hall meeting, and I'm thrilled to be here and see so many friends here in the audience, people who were with me before there was any Christie bandwagon. I guarantee you that. It was, maybe like a wagon, little wagon, like a little red wagon. That was about it. But I appreciate you all being here this morning. You know, I've talked to people before about this. I hold these town hall meetings, and we came up with the idea to do this because as governor, your life changes significantly. You like to pretend that it won't. Because I'm married, and been married for 26 years, and we have 4 children between 8 and 18, and I still go to their games and go to the recitals and the plays, and you try to keep your life as normal as possible, but it's kind of hard to keep it that way when you're traveling with 3 state troopers all the time, in black Suburbans with dark windows, and you never go in the front door of any place anymore. I go more back doors, side doors, dark staircases. I walk through more kitchens than anybody you'll ever meet. And what that does is it tends to make you isolated. You only see certain people. You see your staff, and you see the people that your staff wants you to see. And it, can make you only hear certain things. So early on in my governorship, I decided that I wanted to do this. We're now over 75 town hall meetings that we've done since I've been governor in 20 out of our 21 counties. Salem County, I swear I'm coming. It's the only place I haven't hit yet. We've been in Bergen a number of times. And the reason for it is because I get to hear directly from you then what's on your mind. Not just what they put in the newspapers. Not just what you see on television. Not those things. What you get to see then and hear is what's really on your mind. And you get to hear directly from me, not filtered by anybody else. So it's not just the little parts the newspaper decides to put in about what I say or what they put in the headline. You get to hear all of it, for good and for bad. And I think it draws us closer together. At least that's what I hope it does. And so, I'm talking about a lot of different things so far this year, but today's a big day. Because we only have 60 days left in the legislative session. 60 days left for the legislature to do the work that I laid out in my State of the State address all the way back in January. And it happens every year, and you never get used to it when you're governor. Because when you're governor, you just want to get things done. You propose things, you talk about them, let's finish it. When you're in the legislature sometimes, your goal is the exact opposite. Talk about things and not do anything so that you won't get anybody angry. Because whenever you do something, all you know this who are elected officials around here, whether it's at the local level or the county level or at the state level, whenever you do something, somebody's going to be unhappy. But that's not what we're sent to do, is to make everybody happy. We're sent to get things done. So with 60 days left, let's talk about the big things that need to be done. First, New Jersey needs some tax relief. And over the last number of years, we've gone about cutting the budget, reducing the size of government. I mean, think about this. We had an $11 billion budget deficit when we got into office on a $29 billion budget. And we were able to close that gap without raising taxes. But who would have thought in January of 2010 that just a little over 2 years later, we'd be in a position to be saying, now we can cut taxes. We can, because we've made the hard choices, if you've made the hard choices with us. And I want to cut taxes for everybody, 10% across the board. For everybody who works in the state should get a tax cut. Even those folks who don't pay income taxes, because they make minimum wage, they make below what they would have to pay income taxes. We give them the earned income tax credit as a little bridge, to try to make sure that we get them through some of these difficult times. We want to increase that as well, because everybody who works in this state should get some tax relief, and you wouldn't think that's controversial, but we still haven't gotten it done in Trenton. We need to enact tenure reform in our schools. And it's a really simple proposition, everybody. Why shouldn't we be able to hire and retain the best teachers? Why shouldn't we be able to release the ineffective teachers? Why shouldn't our children have the very best people standing in front of every classroom? And why shouldn't those excellent teachers be paid based in part on how excellent they are, based on accomplishment? All of you who work in the private sector, you know that if you get a raise, it's not just because you're a year older. You get a raise because you're actually doing something right, because you're adding to the productivity of your company, because you're doing things that your company wants to do to make them better. It's only in education that we feel like this shouldn't happen. I don't understand why. And I don't understand why anybody should be guaranteed a job after 3 years and 1 day in that job. And let me tell you, right now in our education system in New Jersey, no matter what anybody tells you, it is nearly impossible to fire an ineffective teacher. And I'm going to tell you what's going on in Newark right now. They have 70 ineffective teachers that they are paying every day who they won't let go to work because they've been judged to be so ineffective that they don't want them in the front of the classroom because it'll be negatively affect the children, yet we're still paying them. And you know why? Because the last time they tried to fire a tenured ineffective teacher in Newark, the process took 17 months, cost over $400,000 in legal fees. Start doing that math. Times 70 ineffective teachers, and that's just the ones we know about. Now, when I talk about this, let me be really clear. The overwhelming majority of teachers in our public schools in New Jersey are really good teachers, who are working really hard to try to make the educational system better for our children and to help them reach their full potential. And I honor those teachers. My argument's not with the teachers. My argument's with a union that doesn't want people judged based on merit. They want a system like we have now. You know how you get more money? The union negotiates it for you. You know how they negotiate it for you? If you show up every September, you get more money. Just gotta show up. We make no qualitative evaluation as to whether you're doing well or poorly. That was actually the union. Please don't be alarmed, this has happened before. You see the noise I give back to them. There's no qualitative evaluation done. And our kids deserve better. And you know who else deserves better? The really good teachers deserve better. They should not be paid the same way the ineffective teachers are paid. We should honor the really good teachers. And one of the ways we should honor them is by paying them more. So we need to get tenure reform and merit pay done in the next 60 days. Now, I also talked about the war on drugs in the state. Now, the war on drugs in the state and our country, you know, it started with the best of intentions. But it's failed. It's failed. We have thousands of people in New Jersey State Prison who are nonviolent drug offenders who go into jail drug addicted. They get drugs smuggled into them in jail, They leave jail drug addicted, and we wonder, when they leave jail, why they commit crimes again. But they commit crimes to support their habit. It costs us $49,000 a year to warehouse a prisoner in our state prison system. I have a much different idea. I think for first-time nonviolent drug offenders that they should be sent to mandatory inpatient year-long drug treatment. Now, I will tell you, for any of you out there who yourself or your family or your friends have had experience with drugs, you know that almost no one ever goes to treatment willingly. You know, I had it in my family. You know, you find out they're on drugs and you confront them. You say, are you taking drugs? You say, no. And then a test comes back that says they have drugs. No, the test was wrong. You come up to them and you can tell that they're high on something. And they go, it's you, not me. We know this, we've seen it. And what is it? It's the symptom of addiction, everybody. This is a disease. It is a disease. Now, I know that some will say that when you make that first wrong choice to try drugs at all, if you didn't make that wrong choice, then you would never become addicted and be subject to the disease. Well, that's right. But guess what? People make mistakes in this world. Children make these mistakes. Young adults make these mistakes. Older adults make these mistakes. And for some of them, they are just genetically predisposed to be addicted. Now, what are we going to do with these folks? It costs $24,000 a year for inpatient drug treatment. $49,000 a year to throw them in jail and do nothing. So in the short term, it doesn't make sense for these folks to be thrown in jail and done nothing with, because it costs us double to do that. And in the long term, it's even more expensive. Because you know what happens? They come back out of jail, they're drug addicted, they're committing crimes, but even more than that, they're not contributing to our society, they're not employed, they're not paying taxes, but even worse than that, they're not being a good father or mother, they're not being a good son or daughter, they're not being a good brother or sister, they're not being a good husband or wife. And that tears at the very fabric of our society. And so I believe it's time for us to get smart about this. Now, for violent offenders, those violent offenders need to go to jail. You commit violent acts. That's why, coupled with this drug treatment proposal, I also put forward a constitutional amendment proposal to change the way we provide bail. Right now in New Jersey, the only thing a judge can take into consideration as to whether to grant bail or deny bail to a violent criminal is risk of flight. Well, most of these folks don't have any money. It's not going anywhere. What that means is almost everybody, regardless of your history, gets put out on bail. You can have a sheet as long as my arm, all filled with violent acts, and you still get put back out on the street again. Why is that bad? Not only is it because someone who's been has a history of violence is back out on the street, but it also hurts our judicial system because they go back out on the street and often they intimidate witnesses. And if you go to Essex County, for instance, where this is at its peak, you know, you have trials that can't happen because witnesses disappear because they're scared. You have police officers demoralized because they arrest a violent criminal at 9 o'clock in the morning and they're back out on the street before their shift is over. It undercuts our ability to have an effective judicial system. So, let's clear out the jails from these one-time nonviolent drug offenders. Let's open up the cells for the truly violent sociopaths who are committing mayhem and murder on our streets. And let's save money in the process. And let's save lives in the process. See, because to me, every life is precious. Every life is precious. And no one of God's creations is beyond redemption. It just isn't. That's what I've been taught. I believe that's what New Jerseyans believe. But we have to give people the tools to deal with their disease. And we can do it. It's within our grasp, and we should do it. You know, there's some people who say that's being soft. The first time I was ever accused of that. But I'm happy to be accused of that, because we have to give these people a chance to deal with their addiction. And we know that treatment can work. So we need to get that done between now and July 1st. And lastly, we have to end the abuse of sick pay benefits. I'm so tired of talking about this. You know, you saw more recent reports that we have public officials who are in line to get $300,000 payouts when they leave their jobs in a single check. You have reports of towns and even counties having to bond to pay the sick leave payouts. Now listen, this seems pretty simple to me. You know, sick leave is when you're sick. And if you have been sick, so you have to take sick leave, you know what the benefit you get is? You're not sick. It's a pretty good benefit. And we should not be paying people for not being sick. And that's what we're doing. And so I have a very simple plan on this. It's called zero means zero. We can't take away the benefits that people have already accrued against the law. Okay? That's fine. We have to pay for our past mistakes. An old story in New Jersey. But let's stop making the same stupid mistakes. So let's, between now and July 1st, pass the zero means zero bill, which says very simply this: from this day forward, you can accrue as much sick time as you want. But when you leave, it stays. You don't get a check for it. I'll tell you guys, you know, you might as well, really, you might as well have a party for these folks when they leave. You know, because all of you pay for it, you get this big check, at least you can get a thank you on the way out the door. Right? It could be like a wedding. Everybody lines up and hands an envelope to somebody, you know? Say thank you for your service, and here's my contribution to your sick leave payout. The public worker can then say, thank you very much. Thank you for the check. Right now, all that happens is it gets yanked out of your property taxes and gets paid. Or they borrow it, and then you gotta pay it back with interest because they get paid. Makes no sense. And this is one where the Senate President and I agree. Senate President sponsored a zero means zero bill. I told them if they pass it, I'll sign it. We need to bring the Assembly Democrats along, who want, in the future, everybody to accrue another $7,500 on top of this. Well, that would mean billions of additional dollars in liability for all of you. I mean, I don't see why we should make the same mistakes that we made in the past. So we need to do this. We need to do this by July 1st as well, because we can't wait any longer. Every day that goes by, they're accruing another sick day that you're going to pay them for when they leave. So there's a real cost to inaction on this. So here we are, 60 days. Let's seem like a lot. There's other things we need to do too, but to me, those are the really important things. And you heard me talk about the Assembly Democrats. The Assembly Democrats, I don't think they've gotten the memo from all of you. You know, let's talk about what's happened in this state before I became governor. 115 tax and fee increases in the 8 years before I became governor. Think about that. 115 tax and fee increases in the 8 years before I became governor. You know what that is for the 8 years of purely Democratic rule in this state? That's a tax or fee increase every 25 days. Every 25 days, they increased another state tax or another state fee on you. For 8 years, every 25 days. These Democrats in the Assembly, that's what they've done. That's the record. And that kind of tells me they're obsessed with raising taxes and fees. I mean, they can't help themselves, I suspect. They just can't stop doing it. And I have to tell you, it's been 834 days now since I've been governor. 834 days where they haven't got to raise taxes. So you know what's happening now. 34 days, they're going through withdrawals. I mean, you know, the people who raise taxes and fees every 25 days, they're going 834 days without raising the tax. Getting tough now. They're getting desperate. And so what have they done? Because they're still trying, you know. So in May of 2010, they introduced a bill to raise the gas tax by $2.4 billion. I told them forget it. I'm going anywhere. In later May of 2010, they passed an income tax increase. I vetoed it the day they sent it to me. In June, we had Assembly Democrats vote against $2.3 billion of tax cuts for the job creators in the state, for small businesses, that we're phasing in over the next 4 years. And already we've created nearly 70,000 new private sector jobs, in large part because we're returning more money to businesses so they can spend the money on hiring people. We're in a competition with all the other states around us, and we have the highest taxes of any of the states surrounding us. Higher than New York, higher than Pennsylvania, higher than Delaware. We got to lower those taxes to be more competitive for business. Assembly Democrats, they voted against that too. 4 Assembly Democrats in July of 2010, including the state Democratic chairman, voted against lowering the property tax cap to 2%. These are hardcore people. Those 4. Hardcore. They don't want a 2% cap on your property taxes. They want property taxes to continue to go up as they did under them in the 10 years before I became governor. They went up 70% in 10 years. Then, in October 2010, they suggested that we raise the gas tax between $2 and $5 billion. That was, again, Assemblyman Wisniewski, the Democratic state chairman, the leader of the Democratic Party in the state of New Jersey. He just can't stand the fact that New Jersey has one of the top 10 income taxes, one of the top 10 sales taxes, one of the top 10 corporate business taxes, the top property tax. He's depressed, I suspect, over the fact that we have one of the lowest gas taxes in America. It's one of the only things where New Jersey has one of the lowest taxes. And poor John Wisniewski and the Democratic Party, they just can't stand it. They want to be in the top 10 in everything when it comes to higher taxes. So he said, let's raise it $2 to $5 billion, we'll be in the top 10 of the gas tax too. Think about it, you're paying over $4 a gallon now. If I hadn't said no to that, you'd be paying much more. Imagine what a joy that would be. Pull up to the gas pumps and see John Wisniewski, the Assembly Democrats' gas tax increase, tacked right on there to the pump for you to pay even more. We passed pension benefit reform on a bipartisan basis that allowed us to save $132 billion for the taxpayers over the next 30 years. Guess what? A majority of the Assembly Democrats voted against that too. Voted against reforming pensions and benefits to save $132 billion over 30 years for the taxpayers. And then in June of 11, they passed an income tax increase again. And I vetoed it again. So, what are they doing now? March 12th, they're proposing another income tax increase. And, you know, after a while, you would think they would get tired of banging their head against the wall. You'd think they would get tired of treating you like something my mother used to talk to me about when I was a kid. When I would go to the store with my mom, and I'd see something that I liked, and I'd ask her if I could buy it, which meant she'd have to buy it, right? Because I was a kid, I didn't buy it. And she'd say to me, "Oh, sure, Chris, you can have it." I thought, wow, what a lucky day. I went with her at the right time. She's going to buy me this. And she said, yeah, listen, just go home, go in the backyard, and pick the money off the money tree. And then you take that money, you go to the store and buy what you want. I'm like, Mom, we don't have a money tree in the backyard. I said, exactly. We don't have a money tree in the backyard. Well, the Assembly Democrats, for the last decade, treated you like the money tree. Every time they want to do something else, every time they want to make government bigger, every time they go in your pocket and they pick the money out. Now, that's why New Jersey is the highest tax state in America. That's why $70 billion in wealth left this state between 2004 and 2008 to go to Pennsylvania and Delaware and Virginia and Florida. All of them have lower taxes than us. That's why it happened. Because you think you're the money tree. A lot of those trees just uprooted and left. So their money doesn't get picked anymore. That's not the New Jersey we want. And so, over the next 60 days, you hear a lot of fighting about taxes. Let's be really clear. I want to cut them. The Assembly Democrats want to raise them. And then they'll tell you that they're going to give you a property tax cut. Now, you have heard this before. You have heard this song before. And they're especially saying this to seniors. See, those seniors aren't fixed incomes. Those seniors struggle with property tax. And so what they're saying to seniors is, we're going to give you a 20% property tax cut. Assembly Democrats went on, deceitfully, went on a conference call with AARP and its members, and so we're going to give you a 20% property tax cut. Here's the thing about those Assembly Democrats. Not only are they going to raise income taxes to try to pay for it, but here's what they didn't tell you also, that's in the fine print. You know those other property tax rebate programs you have? They're collapsing those. So wait a second. Am I really getting a new 20%? No, no, no. You're getting a new 8%, not a new 20%. So they can't even tell you the truth. They're so allergic to cutting taxes that when they even try to do some of it, they gotta lie to you too. Tell you you're getting a 20% property tax cut. When you do the real math and you take away the other programs they collapse into it, you're gonna wonder, where'd those other programs go? And you're gonna do the math yourself. They forget that you have paper and pencil at home too. You know how to balance a checkbook. You know how much things really cost you. So they go on a call with senior citizens, they lie to them. Because they're desperate. They're desperate because they know the state's moving in another direction. Moving away from 115 tax and fee increases. That's the fight over the next 60 days. Is who's gonna win that fight? They gonna win the fight to raise your taxes some more? You really wanna go back to those days? We wanna go back to the days where we lost 117,000 jobs in the year before I became governor? We want to go back to the days before I became governor with the size of the government the way it was. Do you know that today we have fewer people on the state payroll than we did when Christie left the governorship in 2001? We made government smaller. It's the smallest it's been in over 11 years. Because you know that's the only way. You want to pay less? You got to spend less. There's no miracle. And I am no miracle worker. I got no magic to perform for all of you. You want lower taxes? We got to spend less. Same way in your house. You want more money in your savings account? You got to spend less. You want to save money to send your kid to college? You got to spend less. You want to be able to go on a vacation to the shore this summer? You got to spend less. I mean, that's the way it goes. And that's what we've been doing. And that's the fight we're going to have. That's a fight I can't wait for. I can't wait over the next 60 days to have that fight. Because you know what? You get it. What's that now? I can't wait for any fight, you probably said, right? But this is the fight I really want. I really want this one over the next 60 days. And I guarantee you something, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be entertaining because they know they're wrong. And they know I'm right. And so then they get desperate. And you can't wait. You've seen this happen before. They're going to start calling me all those names again. You've seen them on the front page of the paper. Names I can't even repeat that they've called me. I remember that Sunday morning last summer. I opened up the Sunday Star Ledger out of the yellow bag and opened up the front page, and I saw the stuff that I was being called on the front page of the paper. My 11-year-old son, Patrick, came downstairs, and he looked at the paper, and he goes, "Dad, I thought they couldn't put bad words in the newspaper." I said, "No, they can, Patrick, just when they're about your dad. They can put it in the newspaper." It's going to get a little hairy for the next 60 days. I'm going to need your help. Because if we want to change the state fundamentally, if we want to become a state that's growing jobs again, if we want to be a state where people go back to work, if we want a state that has a smaller government and a smarter government and a more efficient government, the only way to do that is to fight the people who put us in this shape to begin with. Believe me, you're not going to change Trenton by relying on the same people who have been there forever. And I'll end with this and then get to the fun part of the program. I am under no illusion that those of you in this room who voted for me in 2009 voted for me for my charm and good looks. All right? I know that. I think those of you in this room who voted for me because you knew how bad off this state was. You knew how far off track we were. And you needed somebody you hoped would be tough enough and stubborn enough to grab this thing by the throat and fix it. I am not in this to be loved. I got plenty of love at home. I'm not in it to be loved. My mother told me a long time ago, you got to choose between being respected and being loved. Pick being respected. Because if you're really respected, true love may come. But love without respect is always fleeting. Now, of course, she was talking about women. But I think it applies just as equally to politics. I'm going to do the tough things you sent me here to do. And I'm going to do it without apology. I'm going to do them directly and bluntly. And I'm going to do them in a way that I hope makes you proud. I know there'll be times you'll shake your head and wonder, what is he up to? And why is he saying the things he's saying? But you sent me here to do a job. You sent me here to fix a dysfunctional government. That's what we're doing. So now let's get to the fun part of the program. The fun part of the program is your questions. So we got 4 rules. And I know that there are some people here who have been to the town hall meetings before. And we refer to all of you as repeat offenders. Okay, so you've heard these rules before, so bear with me. But for the new people who are here are the 4 rules. Rule number 1 is, you raise your hand, I call on you. Please do not shout out questions. I will not answer the shouted out questions. Rule number 2 is, don't start asking your question until you get the microphone. And when you get the microphone, because I want everybody to hear you, and I'd like to hear you too. And so once you get the microphone, please tell me your name and where you're from. So I don't have to say, hey, you in the red tie. I can actually use your name. Now, the rules get more complicated as we go on, so hang with me. Rule number 3 is when you get this microphone in your hand, there will be an undeniable, but indescribable pull on you to make a speech. Take my word for it. It happens. And so I'll listen to your speech for a little while. Because you showed up, what the heck? You want to make a little speech? I'll listen for a little while. But there's going to come a moment where I'm going to say, okay, listen, I need your question. And it's not because I'm not interested in your speech. It's not because I'm trying to be rude. It's because there's a lot of people in this room today. I'd like to try to get to as many of the questions as I can. And the longer you go on, the less time we're going to have to get to the questions. And here's the 4th and final rule. Now, some of you have been to town hall meetings before. Some of you may have seen excerpts of my town meetings on the news or on YouTube or somewhere else on the internet. And you may have seen some of my more interesting interactions with my constituents. Now, I don't want anybody to be scared, but here's the deal. I know there are people in this room who disagree with me. And you're welcome to disagree with me. And if you disagree with me in a reasonable and respectful way, I will disagree back in a reasonable and respectful way. However, if today is the day, because all these cameras are here, that you decide you want to show off for your friends at home. If today is the day that you decide you want to take the governor of New Jersey out for a walk, I want to remind you something. We are all from New Jersey. And what that means for purposes of today's meeting is, if you get it, you're getting it right back. All right, so raise your hands, let's get to the good part of the show. Yes, ma'am. Back, hold the flag. He's right behind you with the microphone.
Ellen Kozlowski, Milford, New Jersey. Mr. Hotland, to you, Governor. When or what date will you be vetoing Obamacare?
Well, to veto Obamacare, I'd probably have to be president of the United States. So I can't do that, but here's what we'll do. We have to wait now, and the state has put essentially on hold anything that we're going to do to prepare for implementing Obamacare until the Supreme Court makes a decision at the end of June. And we've gotten extensions from the Federal Department of Health and Human Services to hold off on this stuff, because everybody knows that this very well may be invalidated by the U.S. Supreme Court come the end of June of this year. So, we will hold off and wait and see what the Supreme Court does, and then we'll act accordingly. But we have stopped doing anything, and I won't do anything, to advance this until I hear from the U.S. Supreme Court, because that's a smart thing to do. I shouldn't be spending any more of your money on a program that may go away by order of the Supreme Court. So let's wait and see. If the Supreme Court upholds it, then we're going to have to decide what we do from there. If the Supreme Court strikes it down, our course is pretty clear. It's going to have to go back to the President, back to Congress, and we're not going to do anything here to try to move it down the road. He's coming right here for us.
Good morning, Governor Christie. I'm going through a divorce in Monmouth County. My name's Rachel Allen Hoff, and I'm under Judge Paula Scandon at the moment. In October 2011, Judge Scandon stripped me of all my parental rights to my 2-year-old son. I only had supervised visitation. And this was a punishment for an order of protection I was seeking in New York City when my husband failed to dispose of his handgun under court order. My son had to endure over a month of barely seeing me, until Judge Scandon was summarily overturned by the appellate court for his illegal action. Since then, Judge Scandon has gone on to make other illegal rulings against me, such as denying me access to my clothing, granting no money for legal fees, and only issuing my husband to pay $1,000 a month in support, putting me and my son under the federal poverty level. All while my husband makes over $500,000 a year on Wall Street. This is not an isolated incident. Judge Scandon has done similar things to other women and has a history of putting women in financial ruin under his court. I have a 2-part question. What will you do as governor to ensure that judges like Scandon follow the laws or are taken off the bench? And number 2 is Judge Scandon is the former law partner of Assemblyman Sean Keane, whose main platform is reducing alimony for women. What will you do as governor to make sure that judges are kept from carrying out their own political agenda on the bench?
All right, let me try to separate out the answers to 3 things. First of all, I'd like you to give your contact information to Joe, so that we can get back in touch with you after we look into some of the specifics of your particular matter. Secondly, as to the question on judges following the law, you know, I've been having an argument across the state with the legislature, with the Senate in particular, about judges. And everything from the Supreme Court, where they just recently refused to seat one of my nominees who's from here in Bergen County, to numerous vacancies on the Superior Court around the state because they refused to hold hearings for my nominees. And the reason for this, that many of them have stated, including Senator Loretta Weinberg from this county, is that because I've said I want to change the courts, because I think the courts are acting outside of the law in many instances, and that we need to get judges who understand that the legislature makes the laws, and the governor signs them, and their job is to interpret those laws and then enforce them, not to make them. So we're at loggerheads on this now. A lot of fighting over these judges. Here's the problem, to be honest with you. In general, the public doesn't care. They don't engage. Either because they don't understand it, or they're too busy, or it doesn't maybe affect them personally until it affects you personally. And I don't know, I'm not asking you this question, but I'm saying just a hypothetical question. How much did you really care about what was going on in the courthouse in Monmouth before it affected you directly? You know, right? You probably didn't know about it. And if you have a friend or family member who's affected by it, you know, you don't engage in it because it's a bunch of lawyers and they do what they do. We need to care about who we put on the bench because they affect real people's lives. Whether it's how judges rule in a criminal case and whether they sentence someone to jail or they let them free. It's how they rule in these family court cases, whether it's in a divorce situation, adoptions, child abuse, and in civil cases where people maybe were suffered a wrong at the hands of a professional in the state, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and they're seeking redress of that. We've got to care about who you put on the bench, because your story, without me saying whether, you know, I don't know who's right and who's wrong in all this, and I won't make that judgment because it's not my place and I don't know all the facts. But what I will say is this: these people now can see how it's directly affecting your life and the life of your son. And we gotta care about who we put on the bench. And listen, the only avenue to get them off, there's only two avenues to get them off. When you get appointed to the Superior Court in New Jersey, you're appointed first for a 7-year term. And then you get reconsidered. And if you get renominated and reconfirmed, then you're on for life, till 70. So I'm being much more discriminating about who I renominate. It had been almost like a rubber stamp, automatic. I'm not doing that. You're going to see me do less of it in the coming weeks. I'm doing less of it because I'm at wit's end about how to change this bench in the state. By the way, a set of judges who are now suing me and the legislature over asking them to pay their fair share for their pension and health benefit costs, and it's gone to the Supreme Court, and the very judges who are going to benefit from the decision are making the decision. Right? If you don't think it's time to change what's going on in this state, I need you all to get engaged in it, because I'll tell you what the state Senate tells me: you don't care. So they act the way they want to act. And I'm the only one who's elected by all of you to try to enforce that change. So that's one way to get them off. The other way is impeachment. Now, in my lifetime, I don't remember a judge being impeached in this state. It's an extraordinarily high standard to do it, and it should be, because we shouldn't have judges being impeached just because we disagree with them. But those are the only two ways to get judges off the bench once they're there. And so the process of picking these judges and confirming these judges and holding them to account when they come up for reappointment has got to be scrutinized by all of you too. And so when the state Senate turns down an incredibly qualified Asian American immigrant like Phil Kwan from right here in Bergen County for no good reason, when they vilify his parents, who are also immigrants and ran a liquor store, and made all kinds of implications about illegal action by his parents, when in fact the U.S. Attorney's Office had reviewed this and found no illegal conduct by his parents. They play politics with this stuff. They play politics with people's lives. And then it affects your life. Because when some of those people get put on purely for politics, they're only beholden to the people who put them on, not to the people who show up in their courtroom. So we need to change the bench. We need to put people on the court who understand their job is to interpret the law, not to make the law. And so we'll look into your specific instance. Joe will get your information, and we'll get back to you with what we found, and also the status of that judge and whether he's tenured or before tenure. I don't know, because I don't know this. I know the name, but I don't know the status. So we'll get back to you with that information. And in the end, I know this is a really difficult time for you and for your son. No matter what is going on, it's a painful and difficult time. And so thanks for coming out and raising the issue, because it helps to educate me about the issue, and hopefully it gives me a chance to do something about it, if not directly for you, for others who might be affected by the same type of conduct. And I think you're really brave for standing up and telling your story, so thanks for doing it. The young man has a question. Yes, sir.
Where's from Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey?
Point Pleasant Beach? You're a long way from home, buddy. Not lost, are you? All right, what do you got?
My principal has been, well, I want to know the question, like, I'm kind of confused.
How about this? How about I get back to you in a couple minutes? I'll come back to you. I'll get somebody else's question. You sit down and think about, because you probably didn't think I was going to call on you. So, I hear you. Okay? So you sit down and think about what you really want the question to be. Think about it. Get it down to a couple of sentences in your head, and then I'll get back to you and you can ask the question to me in a little while. All right? So you don't have to worry about standing up there and feeling confused. You'll get your question right and I'll give you an answer. All right? We'll go to somebody else.
Thank you, sir, for taking my question.
Sure.
My daughter's 18
David, where you from?
Oh, Chris, Bergen, New Jersey.
Okay.
My daughter's 18 and a half, and she's autistic. She's had the benefit of an excellent program, the Richfield Magnet program, and she faces many challenges, as our kids all do. It's two parts, my question. One is, how do we get all these districts on board to truly help our kids? Much to your point with that other woman, the districts appoint a child study team. The child study team comes in and they determine what's best for our kids. And they're looking after their budget. So how do we get them on board and get them to really, every district, to get together and do what's best for our kids? Our kids need this. Secondly, when she was diagnosed 11 years ago, we were told New Jersey was the best state to be in, and it is, without a question. We have one of the top programs out there. However, when they age out, there's nothing. And one way or another, our taxes are going to pay for them. Either we're going to pay for them now and get them on track and get them out and be productive in society, or we're going to support them for the rest of their lives. Yep. So I don't expect an answer now, sir.
Well, I got a couple for you, all right? Let's start with the last part first. Mary Pat and I have spent a lot of time on this issue. It's one of the issues that we picked on a personal level to spend a lot of time on. Mary Pat spends a lot of time on the issue of families with children with autism. And the reason is that we've some friends who've gone through it, so we have personal experience with it. And also because New Jersey has the highest incidence of autism of any state in America. And so when you're the governor and the first lady of a state that has that challenge, we decided we wanted to spend time on it to make sure we really understood it, so that whatever policies I pursued were based upon actual conversations with real parents and children and educators who are going through this. On the age out question, it is one of the most important challenges we're going to face in this state over the course of the next 2 decades. Because the autism rate has gone up so significantly, so quickly, as these children, and you're right, the services that the state provides from the time of diagnosis through the age of majority are outstanding services. We can be better, and I'll get to that on your first part in a second, but they're generally pretty good. But when we age out, there's a dirty little secret in New Jersey that we don't talk about. That New Jersey institutionalizes more of its citizens than any state other than Texas. Probably didn't know that, and I didn't know it until I became governor. We put more people in institutions in this state than any other state in America other than Texas. Now we know from the medical research that that's wrong. Now, there are always people who are so profoundly disabled or so profoundly mentally ill that they're going to need an institution. And so we will always have institutions available to make sure that those people are cared for in a humane way, because they cannot be mainstreamed into the community. However, I believe we are institutionalizing too many people who could thrive and in fact reach their full potential in the community setting. So this year, we're adding $24 million for community placements for people who have aged out. In addition, we have a task force right now that's going to report back to me soon on looking at whether or not we need to close some developmental centers, because the people within them don't belong there. They belong in the community. My commitment is that every dollar that we save from closing a developmental center will be put into community placements for folks who've aged out. Now, the last part of this that's really key, and that everybody can participate in, is that when we start to do these community placements in group homes, we have a bit of a NIMBY problem. We have people in some towns who say we don't want developmentally disabled in our neighborhood. And we have trouble at times placing these group homes. Now, I understand that everybody should have the right in their own towns to determine, how their towns are developed. However, there's no reason that these folks in group homes pose any danger to anybody. They wouldn't be there if they did. And we know that in that group home setting, that so many of these folks can really grow well beyond anything they could ever accomplish in an institutional setting. The other part of the community setting that gives parents a sense of ease, and one of the things I've heard over and over again from parents, is that they lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering who's going to take care of my child when I'm gone. The more that they're in these community settings and help to support themselves, the more that worry lessens. It never goes away, but it lessens. So we're very focused on this. I spent a lot of time, and Mary Pat has spent a lot of time, talking to families to find out what's really needed. And the age out issue is the thing that has parents with children with autism the most concerned. And it's the one we're really focusing on in terms of where we're going to put our resources. On the first question, the other problem that we have in the state is that there are certain school districts, as you know, that do much better at this than others. And so what happens is, the autism community is a very active and vocal one, and they find out where those places are. And you then have an influx into those districts of parents who literally move to get their children in that school district because they have a reputation for providing such excellent service to children with developmental disabilities, particularly autism. So what we're working on now is to try to set up a system where every county has a center of excellence, so that we take what's happening in the best school districts. For instance, MacLeay has a great reputation for their program. Well, let's look at, have the Department of Education look at, what are they doing? What services are they providing? How are they approaching those children? Why don't we set up a county center that provides the same services, the same practice, so that if you live in Essex County, you don't have to move to Montclair to get that service. You stay in your home and send your child to that public institution so they can get that. So that's the idea we have to deal with the problem you're talking about of varying child study team decisions, varying services provided in different school districts that force people either to be underserved or to force them to move, to go to a place where they'll be served appropriately. So that's our idea. It's going to take some time to get that together. But that's where we're moving to, is to try to develop centers of excellence in every county. So no matter which county you live in New Jersey, if you have a child with autism or another developmental disability, you'll have a center of excellence in your county to send your child to, so you don't have to move. You don't have to sell your house to go to another place to get them the right care. Any of you in this audience who have encountered, either for yourself personally or have friends or family members who have children with autism, it is an enormous psychological strain on those families. And depending on how profound the disability is, it becomes more and more difficult. So as a state, what I think we need to do is to figure out, because you're absolutely right, we're going to be supporting these children one way or another. If we don't give them the tools to reach their maximum potential, let's get to it. And so that's why there's been such a focus in this administration on this issue, because it's not only the humane thing to do, it's the smart thing to do economically for our state's future. So thanks for raising the issue. It's a really important one to me and to Mary Pat. Thanks for what you're doing. Got another quick demonstration to the class. All right. Yes, sir. Tan jacket.
Harold Smith, Clifton. My question, Governor, is how do we stop local municipalities from siphoning funds that were dedicated just for library use? In my town in Clifton, they use this scheme called Indirect Costs, and they charge the library this year $202,000. This has been going on since 2007, so they've siphoned off over $1 million. And some of these indirect costs are like use of buildings, $83,000, city manager services, $25,000, legal fees, $27,000. The library has its own legal staff, and they base these charges on as if the library has received federal grants and they really haven't, because I've opened the library, and they said they haven't received any federal grants, and they're saying these are so-called administration charges for this type of grant. We spoke to the state librarian's office, and they say their hands are tied because it has nothing to do with the portion the library receives from a state grant. So where do we go from here? Thank you.
Here's where we go. If that's stuff that you can, what you're reading from, you can hand over to my staff and put your contact information on there. Here's what we'll do. The person who's going to have jurisdiction over this is the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, who oversees the operation of financial operations of municipalities. And so what we're going to do is get your information to Rich Constable, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs. He's going to get to it and have his staff get back to you to talk about it and look into what's going on in Clifton. We have a situation going on right now that's similar to this, where we put this 2% property tax cap into effect. When we put a property tax cap into effect, it really only has 3 exceptions, right? Pension payments, health benefit costs, and debt service. And we've now passed health and benefit reform, pension reform. So it's lowered by hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of time, the costs to municipalities and school districts and counties in terms of those costs. Now what's happening? What's happening is a lot of towns are deciding to play a little game. Right? It sounds like they might be playing in Clifton there. Now they're charging you fees. They're proposing fees for services that they didn't fee before because they say that's outside the cap. So in one town, for instance, the mayor threatened a garbage fee if they didn't vote to exceed the property tax cap. They're proposing public safety fees as ways of getting around the property tax cap. So this is the first year the cap's been in effect, in full effect, this 11-12 year. And what we're doing now is the Senate President and I have agreed on a piece of legislation, which I think will get passed between now and July 1st, that says any new fees you put into effect have to fit under the cap. Close that loophole. You know, human ingenuity by elected officials when they want to get at more of your money is inspiring, really inspiring. And so I wouldn't be surprised if some of that's going on in Clifton. We'll look into it, and we're going to close the loopholes on the cap regarding these outside fees that folks want to charge. They're either going to be banned, or if you want to have these outside fees for real reason, they're going to fit under the cap. I think that'll eliminate the desirability of the fees, because the fees are seen set in the first place just to get around the cap. So if they got to figure it out under the cap, they got to figure it out under the cap. We want to stop the explosion of property taxes in the state. And the only way to do it is to get them to spend less money, as we were talking about before, and put this cap on. The reason I know it's working is, first of all, because last year we had the lowest increase in property taxes statewide that we've had in 20 years, 2.4%. And they're coming up with all these ways to get around it. If it wasn't working, they wouldn't have to worry about that. It's working. So we're going to tighten it up some more this year between now and July 1st to try to make sure that we stop the explosion of property taxes in the state, because I know it hurts everybody. New families trying to buy a home, middle-class families trying to struggle to cobble money together to put food on the table and to keep the roof over their heads, and seniors who are still in the homes where they raised their family, but now are on a fixed income, and every year their property taxes are going up exponentially, and they're afraid they can't stay in their homes anymore. So we're trying to get that done. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Christie. My name is Anna Leone. I live in New Milford, New Jersey. And New Milford is in Bergen County, and it was one of the towns that was hit really, really hard during Hurricane Irene, the Halloween Day storm, and so forth. And right before the holidays, we had a town meeting with Rich Henning, who is United Water's representative. And he told us that, first of all, United Water was not in the flood mitigation business, and that the only solution to flooding in our town was not to develop, that New Milford was overdeveloped, And ironically, United Water sold a parcel, huge parcel of property to a developer who has proposed this monstrosity of a development, which is adjacent to the floodplain, and a portion of the property is in the floodplain. Now, they have to seek variances before the zoning board, tons of variances, and we've been attending all of the sessions. Their engineers, can I say who the developer? Hakimian. The attorneys and the engineers are showing presentations, and what they're doing is they're working off a map that is 32 years old. And they're saying that legally they can do it because it is the current map that your department, the DEP, has. And regardless of the fact that we flood, they're still going to go ahead with this process. Now, my concern is this. Is there any way that a moratorium could be placed? I don't want to stop developers from developing, but because it's in a sensitive area, and because we're working with fiction and not fact, we're basing something, they're basing, the engineers, this whole monstrosity of a plan on something that's over 32 years old. You know as well as I do with technology. I mean, 32 years ago, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have, you know, all this stuff. How could we possibly go ahead, and even our town attorney has said, legally it may be correct, but morally, you're going to subject the existing homeowners to more flooding.
Sure.
So is there a way that we can cease this from happening?
Well, let me try to go at it this way. Instead of talking about a moratorium, let's try to see why we're working off a 32-year-old map. You know, maybe the way to approach this is to say we need a more modern map to be working off, and that may deal with some of the issues that in fact, or create issues that aren't currently there as evidenced on the map. So what I want to do is find out from the DEP why we're working off a 32-year-old map, because it's news to me. And I'm really concerned about the flooding that's been happening in that area of the state, really that happened all over the state during Hurricane Irene. Now, Hurricane Irene was a 100-year flood, and we know that, but we also know that we've had other flooding incidents across the state on storms that were less significant than Hurricane Irene in your area and in others. And so we've got an issue with that. Let me tell you, the other thing that mitigates flooding is you know, to do some of these engineering projects that get done by the Army Corps of Engineers and others to be able to do this. Now the problem is that they are extraordinarily expensive. And so what happens is you've got a situation where, say in Bound Brook, for instance, which you remember back, back a number of years ago with Floyd, flooded probably worse than any place in the state. As a result of that, they wound up getting together state dollars and federal dollars to do a flood mitigation project in Bound Brook. And this time when Irene came through, Bound Brook was barely touched. That project's about 90% done, and it worked very effectively. So I think part of what we need to do is to look to partner with the federal government in certain areas of the state to start to put at least a plan together to do flood mitigation projects in some of the worst parts of the state. In the short term, though, for your problem in New Milford, we need to look at that map. Because if in fact the map is antiquated, which I can't believe the 30-year map would be antiquated, then we need to do something from the DEP perspective to have your municipal officials and lawyers have more current information to be able to base their decision on. Because if they make a decision that denies it, I suspect, they're going to buy litigation off of that. And there's going to be a big fight over it. They should be fighting over the most current information, not over dated information. So, Jean Ashmore, right back there, just waved to you. She's the head of our constituent relations office. She'll talk to you after the town hall meeting to get all the information. And then we're going to have Commissioner Martin of the DEP contact you directly to talk about this and contact the municipal officials in New Milford to make sure that we're providing all the necessary information and support we can to try to get them to make the right decision for your town.
I appreciate it, because they were very baffled themselves when the question was asked, how old is his dad? You're learning to walk something that's 32 years old.
Sure.
And he's had, these problems for the past few years and even prior. So to me, it seems ludicrous to try to build something. You're only going to, compound the problem.
Compound the problem, yeah. And I would say, talk about being confounded. Like, you're in charge of a $30 billion government with 60, 70,000 employees. You can't imagine the stuff I find out on certain days where I cannot believe certain things are going on. I tell people, it's like, one guy can sleep at night. I got 60,000 people who have letterhead with my name on it. And I have absolutely no idea what the heck they're doing those days, And so, that's why these, it's again an example of what I was saying at the beginning, why these things are so useful for me. Because I didn't know anything about this, about what was going on. And it sounds like the DEP could be playing a role in making matters worse in New Milford rather than better. We shouldn't be doing that. If we can make things better, we should be making it better. But when you're governor and you've got so many hours in a day, there's just so many problems they bring to you. Believe me, I feel like it's plenty most of the time. But I like to come out and hear from all of you because it helps me to understand the significance of the problems. And then the greatest thing I love about my job is that I actually most of the time get to do something about it. So we're going to try to do something to help. All right. Now I am on last question. Yeah, I know. Listen, I hear you. We had some speeches. I warned you in the beginning. We had some serious speeches. So here's the thing. You think that the pressure, I know I got to go back to the kid. I know. I didn't forget. What I was going to say to all of you is that normally the pressure is on me to have to pick just one of you who all have your hands raised for the last question. I am alleviated from that pressure today. Because I promised the young man over here that if he thought about his question, that I'd get back to him. And I don't want him leaving here today going, the governor's a liar. I promised me I'd get a chance to ask my question, and I didn't. So, you're on, take two. You're from Point Pleasant Beach, and your name is?
Peter Shores.
All right, Peter.
I understand the bullying law that you passed, but I don't understand what to do if a person in authority is bullying me.
All right. First thing you do, I'll give you advice. First is a dad, second is governor. Okay? First as a dad, if someone in authority is bullying you, the first thing you do is to go to your parents and tell them, which I'm sure you probably have done. Next is the advice as governor. Everybody has a boss. Everybody has a boss. And so whoever that person in authority is, who's bullying you, you need to go, and your parents need to go to that person's boss. And you need to lay out the case as to what's going on. And you need to tell the truth about it. You need to make a stink of it. Because no one in this state should be subjected to that. It's not right. And so if there's a person in authority who's treating you in that way, and we've seen some examples of this, unfortunately, very recently, in Cherry Hill and some other places, where people who are in authority, who are entrusted with children every day, may be acting in a way that's completely inappropriate. There's no excuse for it. So, Peter, you need to tell your parents, and if they both have to come, maybe one, maybe the other, you decide which one you think's the better arguer. All right? And you take them with you to this person's boss, and you lay out the case. And if you don't get any satisfaction from that person, then you're going to get one of my guys' cards, and you're going to send them an email or call them on the phone and tell them how the meeting went. And if it turns out that at school this isn't going well, and you don't get satisfaction, then maybe that person will get a call from the Commissioner of Education, who is that person's boss and is everybody's boss in the education, the K-12 education. Peter is apparently an aspiring reporter because it appears he has a follow-up. Peter, what's your follow-up, Peter? Hold on. Microphone's right there, Peter. What's your follow-up?
I kind of need a note for school.
You need a note for school? Thank you, Peter. And good luck. Listen, I want to conclude by saying a couple things quickly. First is, I want to say thank you. For all of you who take the time out of the middle of your day today to come here and to ask your questions and to attend, I really appreciate it. Sorry I couldn't get to more questions, but you know, I won't be a stranger here. I'll be back, and I'll be in the area too at other places, so please come again, and hopefully I'll get to your question. But thank you for coming and for caring enough about your state to come here and to listen and to raise the questions that you've raised. It's really helpful to me and I really appreciate it. Second is, I said to you before when I was starting off the program that there's lots of stuff that people will say at times in the back and forth of public debate. You always got to be careful about that stuff, but what seems to happen with me a lot of the time is that, you know, we've got a lot of members of the press who like to put me on the couch, so to speak. They like to analyze the government, you know? Is he angry? Is he mad? Why does he say the things that he says? What's wrong with him? Were his teachers really nasty to him when he was in school? All the rest of that stuff. And so, you know, listen, you're in public, you got to put up with some of that stuff. But I think it's important at the end of these things to explain to all of you why I am the way I am. So that you don't have to listen to the amateur psychologists who write in the newspaper or talk on TV, but can actually hear it directly from the patient as to why I am the way I am. We are all a product of our parents, right? Whether we like it or not, for good or for bad, we are a product of our parents and how we were raised. Now for me, I have a 79-year-old Irish father. Now, my dad is a great guy. He just turned 79 last week. He's gregarious, he's outgoing, he talks all the time. He comes to a lot of these town hall meetings. He's not here today, but he comes to a lot of the meetings all over the state. When he does, he stays afterwards. He meets with people. He tells embarrassing stories about me from when I was a kid. And he talks about his grandchildren, and by the time he's done, whether you want to be hugged or not, he's hugging you. That's my dad. Now, on the other hand, I had a Sicilian mother. Now, this, of course, is an entirely different kettle of fish than the gregarious, outgoing, backslapping Irish father. The Sicilian mother, and I told my father this all the time, I say it at these town hall meetings, in the automobile of life, my father was merely a passenger. My mother drove the car, my mother ran the show, my mother set the rules, my mother enforced the rules, and she was in charge. And so you heard me say a couple things today about her. The respect and love thing, true story. The thing you heard on the video about, you know, be yourself, because then you don't have to remember tomorrow who you pretended to be yesterday. These are all things that my mother would say to us over and over again as kids. And so she had an enormous influence on my life, as every mother wants to have on their children's lives. I said I had a Sicilian mother because in 2 days, my mom will have died 8 years ago, on May 4th. And she had lung cancer. She was a lifetime smoker. And she got sick very quickly. She was diagnosed on Valentine's Day. And she was gone by May 4th of the same year. And so things happened really quickly. And when she was in the last throes of the illness, I was out in San Diego at a conference as U.S. Attorney of all the U.S. attorneys in the country. And my younger brother called me from home and said, listen, Mom's gotten really bad. She's back in the hospital. They started giving her morphine. And so if you want to see her, like, you need to get home now. And those of you who've been through this, you know, when they start doing the morphine on a cancer patient, it's right near the end. And so I got on the red-eye flight from San Diego and I flew home to New Jersey. I landed in Newark and drove to St. Barnabas Hospital, Livingston, where my mom was. And I got up to her room and she was kind of in and out of things. So I sat by the bed for a while and she wasn't with it. And then she finally kind of got back in it. And she saw me and she looked at me, she said, what day is it? And I said, it's Friday. She said, what time is it? I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. And she said, go to work. And I said, well, Mom, I decided to take the day off to visit with you. I And she said, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. And I said, you know, Mom, are you afraid you're not getting your taxpayers' money's worth today? Because like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. And she reached across and grabbed my hand and she said, go to work, it's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us. She was giving me permission to go. She was going, and she was giving me permission to let her go. And that phrase was not only important for that moment, it was incredibly important, and it's allowed me to feel good about the last days of her life. But it was the way she taught us to be our whole lives. My mother taught us that if you're in a trusting relationship with someone, there should be nothing left unsaid. They should know exactly how you're feeling, what you're thinking. They shouldn't have to guess. She taught me that you owed that to a person you were in that relationship with. And so I know now that if she were here to see the circus that my life has become, that she would say to me, Chris, these people trusted you. They trusted you enough to vote you into the most important job in this state. They trusted you enough to be their governor. And they deserve to know what you think and how you feel. There should be nothing left unsaid between you and them. And that's the way I was raised. It's who I am. And so, listen, I know sometimes that's not attractive. I know sometimes I'll say things that I'm sure you read in the newspaper and say, I cannot believe he said that. And then I hope that there are other times when you read things that I've said or hear them on TV or the radio and say, I am so glad someone finally said that out loud, because we all know it's true. But here's what you'll know. When my 4 years as governor is done, you're not going to have to say to yourself, geez, I wonder what the governor's really like. I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder what he feels about certain people or certain things. You won't have to wonder, you will know. And maybe at the end of that, you'll say to yourself, well, he's not for me anymore, and if I decided to run for re-election, you might say, well, we'll move on to something else. And that's okay, because if you make that decision, you'll be making it because you've gotten to know me. And you don't have to wonder when you walk into that voting booth, I wonder who this guy is. You'll know who I am. And it's my obligation to leave nothing unsaid between us. That's what these meetings are about. And that's what my public conduct is about, is that I don't want you to be guessing. I want you to know. This is who I am. This is what I believe. This is where I stand. This is what I'm going to do, whether it's popular at the moment or not. And I think that's what you deserve from me, because that's the way I was raised. So, I end by saying thank you for giving me the most extraordinary opportunity in my life. I can just tell you that there is nothing more amazing than being elected governor of the state where you were born and raised, where I've spent my whole life, where I dragged my poor wife kicking and screaming from Pennsylvania 26 years ago. And now she's as much a part of New Jersey as I am. Where we're raising our 4 children and where I really hope that they raise their kids. That I get to be governor for a period of time of this place is just an amazing gift. And it's a gift that all of you gave to me. So I thank you for it. I'm going to work as hard as I can every day to be deserving of the honor and the privilege you've given me. And thanks for giving me the greatest ride of my life. I appreciate it very much.